Hi everyone, this is Kate with the GCPL Learning Labs. Today we're going to talk about 3D printing with the Lulzbot Mini, which you will find at several of our locations. First things first, you need to have the printer turned on and you need to open up the Cura software on your desktop. We're going to click on this button that says Load Model. I downloaded this little cat from Thingiverse, and once you have it loaded, you can click on the model and it's going to give you some options for editing down here in the lower left corner. You can rotate it or lay it flat. You can reset it back to the original. You can drag along these axes, and sometimes you will get a model that does need to be rotated or flipped in order for it to print properly, and that might make the difference between whether or not you need a support structure. So do think strategically about how your model is oriented in Cura. You can also adjust the scale. This is a tiny little kitty, so we could maybe go to 10 times. Okay, that's a bit too big. The model will gray out like that if it's too big for your printer, but a handy tool is this Max button, which will give you the biggest size possible for this model on your printer. So this large cat will take 16 hours and 32 minutes to print. For our purposes today, we're just going to go back to the original size. The other button here is Mirror. You can flip it in any direction. But we don't really need any of that here, so we're just going to leave it as is. Now, just to go over some of these options on the left-hand menu, when you're starting out, you're probably going to stay in the beginner section of materials. However, if you're using an unusual material or you can't find the one that you wanted in the next drop-down menu, you can select all, and it's going to show you every material in every one of these categories. It is kind of a lot though, so if this is your first time doing it, just leave it on beginner, and chances are if you're in one of our learning labs, you're going to use either PLA, ABS, or HIPS. This little kitty is going to be printed in HIPS, so we'll select that. It is important to have the proper material selected. If in doubt, just look at the label on your spool of filament and it will tell you what it is. Now, if you don't have 43 minutes, you can choose this high speed option. It is lower quality. It's going to look a little bit rough around the edges, but it's going to give you a print in 23 minutes, give or take, so that is handy to have. On the opposite end of the spectrum, you can click on high detail and it's going to print in higher resolution, so you can see it added a little bit of time. We're just going to stick with standard for right now. If you have a model that has some elements that are cantilevered out to the side, like if this kitty was holding its arms out, for example, you need to click this button, Print Support Structure. It's not going to show the supports here on your simulated model, but if you do have something that has a piece sticking out to the side, then it's going to print a framework that looks kind of like scaffolding underneath it, and you'll be able to easily break it away once your print is done, and that's just going to allow it to print properly. So now that we've covered the editing options, let's click Control, and in the next window, click Print. This little graph is going to show you the temperature. The upper red line is the extruder and the bottom blue line is the temperature of the bed. These will look slightly different for each material profile, and you can see it was still warm from the print that I did earlier, so that's why it's already that high up. We're just going to wait a few minutes to let that get to the optimum temperature, and then the printer will start working its magic. The first thing it will do is navigate to each of the 4 metal discs in the corners to orient itself. And once that is completed, the extruder will move to the center of the bed to start building your model. Now this video is sped up to 2000%, so obviously it's going to be a lot slower when you're doing this in person, but you get the idea of how the additive technology works to build your model one very thin layer at a time. The plastic filament is melted just enough to bind with the previous layer. 3D printing allows you to create complex objects using less material than traditional manufacturing methods. And while this is still a new technology and there's certainly kinks to be worked out, over time it will continue to improve, hopefully to the point where one day we might be able to manufacture whatever product we need at any given time in our own homes. When the printer has finished building the model, the bed is going to move to the back of the printer body and wait there while it cools down. Because the Lulzbots do feature heated beds, it's unsafe to attempt to remove your print right away. The printer will rest for 5 to 10 minutes, and once it has cooled down, the bed will automatically move to the front of the printer, indicating that it is now safe to remove your print.